Hello viewers, this is Bhavana and I welcome you all to the 19 Influencers Talk on the COVID-19 series in association with TechXP. Today we have with us somebody who is an exceptional leader in the media and entertainment industry. With past stints in American Express, Standard Chartered Bank, GE Capital, Eicher Motors, Tata Teleservices, Dainik Bhaskar, Sakal Media, his enriched journey of 25 plus years has also seen him as a director and board advisor at IAA India. Viewers, I present to you none other than Chief Executive Officer India, Eros International Media Limited, Mr. Pradeep Dwivedi. So Pradeep, firstly, a very, very warm welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bhavna. It's wonderful to see you, and thank you so much for having me on your show. I've been hearing great stuff about it, and finally, I'm excited to be on the show itself. I'm sure we'll have some good conversations together, and that might give you a peek into how somebody in media and entertainment industry is, coping with this challenge as some of the other industries as well.
Absolutely. So Pradeep, for the first very question, our viewers would like to know that what has been the impact of COVID-19 on the media and entertainment industry?
Right. So, Bhavna, media and entertainment is all about people, right? It's all about either news, which is serious business, or about entertainment, which is really making sure that people are having a mood to relax and they're able to, live out some of the challenges that they're facing in their day-to-day lives and allow a little bit of escape. The challenge right now is that the entire escape ecosystem has got completely tweaked. While on the one hand, we do have news organizations that continue to be out there in the field and provide news bites to people, and clearly they are risking themselves every day to get the news of how the spread is happening and what can be done to prevent it back to the people. There is a huge challenge on account of the entertainment side of the business as well, because look, the minute the challenge came through, the public venues, the theaters were all shut down. I think even when the situation relaxes a little bit, it will be another 5 to 6 months before theaters come back into play. So clearly you have a situation where the theatrical business is getting impacted. The television entertainment is getting jaded because you don't have new content coming in, because the production is not happening right now. So people are rehashing the content that has been created in the past and trying to make the most of it. Purely from a financial or a business standpoint, also it is a significant impact on the business, because it's all about consumers, and when the consumers are tied up at home, they can't go to shopping malls or do shopping. Even online is restricted only to the grocery. The advertiser interest in advertising on mediums that then allow them access to the consumers reduces significantly. So whether you look at print, you look at television, you look at outdoors, people are not out on the streets, then outdoors loses its revenue stream completely. All the industries are trying to cope with this onslaught. Clearly the impact is a lot more financial than of any other nature, but I also believe that with any adversity there would always be some opportunities to create some new values. There are certain segments of the industry like the OTT business, and a lot of us are hooked on to Eros Now, and if not Eros Now, Netflix or Amazon Prime, etc., to watch new interesting content, and that segment is booming, and clearly the demand for content on that segment is booming. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. But more importantly, I believe media as a responsible sector also needs to make sure that the right messages of social distancing, of making sure that the corrective action that needs to take place is going out, so that we are able to overcome this challenge.
Absolutely. So, Pradeep, for my next question, now during the ongoing pandemic, could you throw the light on the challenges being faced by the media and entertainment industry? And also it is said that every adversity leads to an innovation. So could you tell the viewers something about the new innovations in your space currently, along with certain challenges?
Correct. So there are two parts to your questions. If I deal with the first one first, what are the kind of individual challenges that businesses are facing? So let's take print media, for example. Obviously, the newspapers in most markets, including Mumbai, are not getting delivered. But you can see that this adversity has brought about an innovation where the whole e-paper and the PDF versions of the papers are now being circulated through WhatsApp, through emailers. Leading banks like ICICI and Axis Bank have taken up this opportunity where every morning they send you a mail with links to all the e-paper versions of the paper. So you're not missing your daily news dose.
Sure.
When you look at television, obviously television channels are trying to make sure that not only are they presenting new content, they are bringing popular content from the back. In fact, the searches in television for some of the content that was very popular in 2000s or 90s has begun significantly. One very interesting example would be, for example, Ramayana being played on Doordarshan, which is gaining such huge visibility right now. And for some of us who are old enough to have grown up seeing Ramayana on a live telecast basis, and we used to wait every Sunday for it, it's a good way to refresh our childhood in a way. When you look at news industry, clearly the news industry obviously is challenged on the revenue front, but they are doing a tough task of being able to capture the news on the ground, including the brave work being done by our doctors and our paramedical services and staff and nurses in coping with this challenge. So clearly the challenge is a lot more on the operational front, and then there is a people impact, right? So all the creative people, people who write stories and create content, and people who act and sing and dance and bring all this amazing talent to the fore, people such as yourselves who have a brilliant Bollywood and a movie record as well. You're all constrained at home. Now our ability to exploit that has been very limited. But again, like you rightly said, this has also brought about some very interesting innovations. So we are right now experimenting with green screen options, where the talent is being given out its scripts and they're able to do it at home, and we are then able to replace the backdrop, much as the backdrop on this screen, where you think I'm sitting in Hawaii and giving you this interview, but I'm actually sitting right at my home and giving this interview right here. So we are looking at creating quickies to keep feeding into the content that we already have. The other thing that we have done is, normally what happens that when you do a movie or a web original, at least in our space of entertainment, and I'll dive a little deeper into that, there is the whole post-production VFX phase that takes a certain amount of time. We've had a backlog of products that we had made, content that we had made, which we want to complete the VFX work on priority and make sure we release them, as soon as this phase is over. And even if, let's say, the theaters don't come back very quickly, at least for us in the in the film entertainment business, we believe that OTTs will be a large way to go, and we will showcase our new films not only on our own OTT, but if opportunity and commercials make sense, on some of the other OTT platforms as well.
Absolutely. So, Pradeep, for my next question now, with the, with everyone going digital during the ongoing pandemic, and also a lot of my speakers and everyone around has said that the digital movement will continue to thrive in the coming years. So, what do you
Right.
see? What is the road ahead, 6 to 12 months down the line for your industry?
You are absolutely spot on when you talk about digital, because
Sure.
digital is going to fundamentally transform everything that we do from an input to an output perspective. And let me just slice that out into these two parts. When you look at input perspective, the way the talent and the teams today work, including collaboration tools such as Zoom calls or Skype calls or Hangouts, etc., to collaboratively working on story ideas, to collaboratively working on financing and putting the structures together, to creating co-production opportunities, a lot of it will move on to technology platform where remote working will become the norm. When
Sure.
you look at the demand side of the business, which is the consumption side of the business, clearly the audience cannot get enough of content on digital. With social distancing becoming the norm, at least in the foreseeable future, you will have people, spending a lot of time on personal screen. And that is where, the digital technology comes handy, that while it allows you as a family, television is something that the entire family watches and it's not a personal device, but you have television versions or television apps that are now available through multiple offerings, allowing you the visibility of a TV screen on an individualized phone screen. Similarly, the OTT apps are doing that. And those content will continue to demand a significant growth. When we look at the film entertainment value chain, our traditional port of call used to be theatrical as the first port of call. Then we used to, make sure that we are monetizing and presenting the content through television premieres. Then it used to go on to OTT, and then there was a long value chain. So, you make CD, DVDs, or you give it to local cable operators, or in-flight entertainment, right? You see the latest movies when you fly international most of the time.
Sure.
That entire value chain is now significantly shifting. We believe that digital in this one quarter itself will jump two steps, more go ahead of television and go ahead of theatrical as the first port of call. For example, even Disney, which is coming up with a big movie called Mulan, is now thinking of taking it to Disney Plus or Disney Plus first. There is a conversation that all the other big movies, big budget movies that were thought were actually going to go on OTT platforms. We know that a lot of Chinese platforms are now looking at acquiring Hollywood content and making it available on mass markets, primarily on the back of this digital strength. So digital is going to be really big. And it is evident in other sectors as well, right? I give the example of newspapers now being delivered to you digitally through PDFs and e-portal apps, etc. And
Sure.
that will be the trend that will continue for a while now.
Sure. So, Pradeep, for one more question, which I have, is that you have, such rich experience you carry. Do you have any suggestions currently for your market leaders on how best they can capitalize in the months to come?
So thanks for that. And I think there are definitely every situation is it's a marketing challenge as well, right? So the
Absolutely.
marketing leaders have to look at two or three things. I would say at the core, you have to look at the brand essence and the core values that your brand espouses. I think in spite of whatever adversities that are there, if you are able to communicate the core value of your brand to the audiences, I think the audiences will appreciate you for what you do, right?
Sure.
So what it essentially means in terms of actual business is that whether your brand is known for either bold actions, or your brand is known for being innovative leader or a social change leader, and there are various brands that I can think of, and I wouldn't want to name each of the brands, but whether you look at a leading tea brand that has been talking about Jagte Raho and a social awareness campaign. Now the earlier Jagte Raho was about people demanding their political rights. Now the new Jagte Raho will be about their healthcare, sanitation, and quality of life rights. Then there are brands that talk about this is the beauty soap of film stars, right? And it's a very popular brand. Now that beauty soap of film stars, while it will continue to be beauty, but the hygiene angle will also have to come into that. That yes, the more you wash your hands and the more you keep yourself sanitized, the better you will be. I'm saying not everything needs to go into the dry mode of putting it with a flavor or an envelope of COVID. But the idea is that the new environment that is unleashed by COVID needs to be considered in your marketing plan, because the audience that is going to perceive your brand campaign will perceive it in the context of his or her surroundings, which is impacted heavily by COVID, right? So you may not make a direct reference to it, but you need to be conscious about it. And last but not the least, the brands need to be extremely sensitive and culturally alive to the impact this is having on families, the impact this is having on societies. So I think some level of cultural insensitivity, or I wouldn't, well, or even if you call it cultural brashness, that could be par for the course in a normal work environment or a normal economy environment, may not be very fair right now, because you have to be sensitive that while there is a large middle class and there is an upper class that is able to tide through this challenge without really facing too much problems, the fact is that there's a huge bottom of the pyramid in India, and there are people who are daily wage earners who today are, completely strapped for cash, even though there is a lot of government support to them. So, as a brand, you have to be respectful of the fact that if your brand is standing for good, and if you are using the strength of your brand to communicate the good and actually make change on the ground, then your brand will continue to live for far longer, will be sustainable, will be respected, and will obviously gain the commercial returns or the market response that you're expecting. But this is the time to stand up and be counted as a corporate citizen, and not necessarily as a profit mongering company machine. That's all the message that I would like to give.
Sure. And Pradeep, my friends at Everything Experiential would like to know that how are the OTT players looking at non-fiction content, and do you feel that it's an exciting genre to get into?
That's a debatable question, Bhavana, because see, the non-fiction content typically appeals to a very niche audience. So whether you look at non-fiction content around environment, around science, technology, sports, lots of the ways to cut the slice. And the biggest problem that an OTT player, or the biggest challenge for an OTT player is, do you want to be a one-stop shop for everything under the menu and have a very large, menu card, or you have to be a niche player where you are known for certain strengths that you have. And I think there are pros and cons on both sides of the thing. At least for our business at Eros now, we are very clear that we want to tell exciting stories through which are filmed entertainments, web series, and scripted series, and largely depend on fiction as the way to go. We don't intend to pursue the non-fiction strategy at this point of time, but I know there are others who have come in. So, for example, Discovery Networks, I believe, has come launched a Discovery Plus platform, which is bringing alive excellent non-fiction content onto an OTT platform, and they're getting pretty good response on that as well.
Sure, sure. So thank you so much, Pradeep, for joining. It has been an absolute pleasure, especially getting the virtual feel of Bahamas right there with you. Thank you so much
Thank
for.
you so much, Bhavna, for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And best wishes. Stay safe. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.